Welcome to Bacademia, a podcast so educational two professors could be hosting it. Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle McGue, and joining me is Dr. Bill Henneman. Welcome to Bacademia. Today our guest is Nikki Harken, who's an instructor in the Department of Communication and Media. She is a baker extraordinaire, a bachelor virgin, well, almost, not anymore, and generally a rad human. So Nikki, you want to tell our listeners some things about yourself?
Sure. I am a bachelor virgin. This is my very first episode I've ever watched. And it's been funny as I've prepared for this, right? Because people are like, really? You've never seen it? And I'm like, no, because I think it's trash. Like, why would I, and not only trash, but like it gives young people this so distorted view of like what relationships should be like. And it turns out I was right. I was right. Yeah. So I have, my husband and I have a blended family. So we have 5 kids between us. 2 of them do happen to be bachelorette or bachelor. I'm not sure. They watch these shows.
That's awesome. So were they excited that you were watching and going to be on the podcast?
They are both at college, so they don't even know, but I can't wait to send them this link because they're going to think it's really funny.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So one of the things that we do is each week we start our episodes with a question. That's just for fun, really. So this week's question is, if someone were to catch you doing something that you should not be doing, what would it be?
Peeing behind a public building.
Nikki, are you outdoor peer?
Oh, if I gotta go, mama's gotta go. You've had children, you know this. Like the bladder is pea size, and if both bathrooms, and I will pee in a man's bathroom like it's my job. I have no worries about that. So if both are full, I'll be out back.
That's awesome. Bill, what have you been up to that you shouldn't have been?
I mean, in my younger years, it was probably like sneaking a drink into a sporting event that I shouldn't have. I know in college, a lot of times we did the old like Pepsi can with like whiskey in it or something. And I've been kicked out of a few Iowa State games because then like a guy, like one of the security guards saw us like passing beers back and forth. That's probably it.
The skinny jean trend is not good for hiding.
Yep. Back in 2000 when we wore the big, and one time when Iowa State, I can't remember what bowl game it went to, but we went there and Pace was handing out these big, like, Yosemite Sam cowboy hats, right? Pace picante sauce. Why they were doing that, I don't know. But they were like, you could stack like 5 or 6 beers in them. So all of us got one and we like stacked the beers and like walked in balancing them into the game, and then we would, it'd be like, quick, grab one out, we'd all pass it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
y'all's are much more interesting than mine. I was like, maybe if I would have thought about when I was younger, I could have come up with some better ones. But right now it's boring things like, I just bit off my fingernails. Like, what is something I shouldn't be doing, biting my fingernails? I don't know. I was just wiping my nose on my sleeve before we started recording. So I'm really attractive stuff here, folks.
I'm notorious at the university for, not during COVID, but it's like not asking for permission to like move chairs or do something like that. Like I have no problem going into a room being like, I'm taking these chairs, we'll figure it out later.
Mm-hmm. I will say I worked as a custodian when I was a student,
mm-hmm.
and I was actually cleaning Bartlett Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we started recording, Nikki was complaining about how dusty her blinds were in her office. And actually one of my jobs was to go into people's offices and wipe, dust everything down. And I would dust those blinds one like blind at a time. And I started working, it was a really early shift, like at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And sometimes I would just lock the door and take a little nap underneath the desk. And then I'd be like, oh, time to go out. Those blinds are all clean now.
That would have been amazing if someone would have walked in while you were asleep. I'm like, who is this?
I don't think that ever happened, but I would have been mortified. Mortified.
When you're tired, you're tired.
Yeah. The sad thing is, now waking up that early is just commonplace.
Right.
But it felt rough at, I think I was maybe like 21 or 22.
But staying up that late was not that big of a deal. That was my thing. You had to get me up at 4:30. I would be like, I'm not going to do this. But if we were like out till 4:30 in the morning, it was just a good time.
Yeah.
I've always been like an early bedtime person. Like my friends, I'd be like, can we just like go out at 5? Like, why are we waiting until 10?
Get
like,
your work in early.
My parents always gave me like a 12:30 like curfew. And like even after I moved out, I'd come back home and I'd be like out and about at college and I'd be like, it's 12:30, I gotta go home.
My mom actually still jokes about when I would have slumber parties, like in elementary, I'd be asleep, right? And all my friends are like playing and getting snacks and they've like taken over my house. And my mom would come find me and she's like, your friends are still awake. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm tired. I'm tired. I gotta sleep. Like I could sleep with vacuums beside my head. Nothing stops me.
I love it. Well, I suppose we should talk about this episode of The Bachelor. Probably. I guess that's what our podcast is. So this week's episode, one word, what you got?
I'm gonna go with I don't know if I have a good word. I'm gonna pass until I hear other people's words. That's where I'm at today mentally.
So I think it's probably easier for me, right? Because this is the first time I've seen it. So my word would be what? That's it. What? I kept repeating that, like, what?
So my word's time. Time. I think everybody wants time with Matt. They're really anxious about getting time with Matt. And that seems to be the hot commodity is time with him.
I am really drawing a blank. Maybe chaos. I felt like this episode was just kind of chaos. Like usually at this point, you're starting to solidify how many participants are in there. And, they're starting to have relationships. And I feel like they've thrown so many people in, so many things have happened. I feel like Victoria's created so much chaos that like no one's gotten time with him to really get to know him.
I would agree. I'm kind of getting grumpy about that.
At this point, like Claire had already taken Dale. They were gone.
Yeah. So you missed that last season. The Bachelorette, she chose her mate in like 3 episodes. They got engaged.
Which doesn't happen.
They are now broken up though. So this episode does begin with Matt expressing his disappointment in Sarah leaving. And then we sort of see a clip that foreshadows this tension between Victoria and Kaite that will grow the rest of the episode. So they're having a conversation and Victoria's talking smack about Sarah and Kaitie's like, let's just move on. Thoughts about that. Thoughts about how this starts. There's been some interesting rumors about Sarah since her leaving.
Oh,
too.
Really?
So I've seen 2 different things. One, I saw some things that suggested that she might be interested in having a relationship with Chasen, who was on Claire and Tayshia's season last season. But then I also saw a rumor that the entire time she was on the show, she actually had a boyfriend back at home who's a famous DJ. I'm not hip enough to know who this is. So I don't know if rumors are true.
Can you be famous if you're a DJ? Like you don't really even make music. Like you're like a fake musician and then you like like, so I don't know if you can really be famous because you're famous for mashing up other people. This shows how old I am. Dang kids with their music.
I think you can be popular, right? Because you're at all the good parties, mixing some music.
There's a difference between good and famous.
So, and I'm old too. So I just think about like Casey Kasem. Yeah, he's a famous DJ. What are you talking about? Right? Like, yeah, he's great. I heard him yesterday. He's on the oldies station, which by the way, I have some issues with because the oldies are now playing really great music.
Okay, so we right away, I think, start moving into a group date, and Chelsea and Matt are, chatting on a couch together, and Chelsea begins talking about her hair. And so Chelsea is a Black woman. She has almost a shaved head, not completely a shaved head. What were your thoughts about this? I have a few things that I've been thinking about, but what are your thoughts about this moment in the show, their connection, et cetera, et cetera?
I think it's good for America to hear this, especially white America, because I think that there is a lot of not understanding about what hair. It's good for men too, just to hear what hair means to women. But I think Black women and hair, there's a lot of culture around it, and white America doesn't understand that. So I thought it was really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wrote that down. I was like, hair, is so emotional. People break up and people cut their hair oftentimes after breakups, right? Part of new identities. And, so I really felt that connection. And I agree, Bill. I loved, yes, the verbalization of how difficult that is to be different growing up.
So, one thing that I think is really important to note is the way that beauty norms are really racialized, right? So we've mentioned before on the podcast that attractiveness, for example, attractive faces, Bill, I think you talked about the symmetry. But of course, we also know that while some of that's universal, that there are slight differences based on cultural norms and perceptions. And in US culture, it is common that we would attach norms around feminine beauty to European white notions of what's attractive. So Black women and their hair is oftentimes, so I was reading an article, so I'm drawing some of this from various things that I've read, but I was particularly looking at an article by Cynthia Robinson in the Howard Journal of Communication called Hair is Race, Why Good Hair May Be Bad for Black Females, and kind of did some interviews with 38 Black women about hair. And what she really found is that women would describe having, so Black women still have a range of hair. Some have thick hair, some have thin hair. There's range in terms of the curl shapes, the kinkiness of the hair and the dryness of the hair. And so people would talk about in this, having good hair meant that it was straighter or easier to straighten, and that was more valued as more beautiful hair. And hearing, oh, my mom has beautiful hair, my sister has beautiful hair, and that meant straighter hair. And yet, like, the curlier hair has all these amazing possibilities for how you could style it. So how can you reframe that as a really positive thing that you might be able to do more with your hair because of those curls? And so I really appreciated her conversation. And of course, her rebellion was to cut off her hair. So Chelsea was like, I'm going to cut off my hair so I don't have to deal with it. And of course, long hair is much more associated with female attractiveness than short hair. So the act of cutting off her hair was sort of rebellious, both because of her femininity, but also because of her Blackness. So I really appreciated that.
But that wasn't your extra credit. So
no, that wasn't my extra credit. I just talked way too much.
That was just some high level professor in there. If you hang out with professors, anytime they're about to just be like, well, there's 4 different theoretical underpinnings of the, yep.
And let me name all the theorists.
Yeah, I can tell when I do that to my friends because their eyes just like glaze over when I'm like,
I hope I didn't make you all glazed.
no, that was good. Yeah, no.
But one of my favorite things is that Victoria and Katie kind of get in this argument, and Katie, I think it's, Katie's like, expressing yourself and name calling are not the same thing. So thoughts about this moment, these fights, are they fair?
Katie is a hero at this point. I feel like the 2 people that I would say are most likely not to end up with Matt going at each other, and Elaine, who was on the show last week, keeps pointing out, and this is, I think, a really good point, Victoria really needs a team. Like, she needs to take a position. And I think for as strong as a personality as she is, she really doesn't have much of a personality, right? No. Like, she's pushy and she's mean, but she just seems to need to take a side on everything without any real backing, which conversely, I feel like Katie's kind of herself. Like, she has stuck up for the things that she believes in. And then there's times where she just hasn't stuck up. And I think it's interesting. They're obviously 2 really big personalities, but they're coming off, like, the way those 2 are perceived, it's very different,
Absolutely. So the group date, Rose goes to Chelsea. People are jealous because that's how that works.
Right.
And then there's this argument between Anna and Victoria over who gets to see Matt first. So they're getting ready to go, like, there's a date, and it's like, who's gonna get one-on-one time with him first? At this point, Victoria makes a Queen Anna versus Elsa comment. And okay, so my children are obsessed with Frozen. We just bought Frozen underwear for my daughter, and she now just pees in the potty. It's the easiest potty training experience I've ever had. All we needed was Frozen undies. And what gets me is, like, her comment, you don't understand that Anna's really the queen of Frozen, not Elsa. So, that was disappointing.
I have never seen the Frozen movies, and it's one of my life goals to never see them. I don't have kids. I'm pretty good with the kids movies just because I work with kids in some respect. But yeah, that's one I purposely have avoided.
It really is good, though.
But if you would have asked me, will Victoria get this analogy correct? I would have said absolutely not. She has had so many like saying she's messed up, and it's like, there's no way she's able to get this metaphor out without screwing it up.
I actually go ahead.
It reminds me of, like, Victoria? First of all, she's so mean. Yeah, Victoria, so mean. Okay, so I don't like her at all.
I love her.
Right?
Like, in a weird, like, odd way. I get a kick out of her.
She reminds me of, like, a mob wife, right? Like, she should be somebody who's married to a mob boss. That's what I kept thinking. And then she had on that big white furry coat. And I was like, she's totally in the mob.
She would be good on a Real Housewives.
Yes.
Like, that is her wheelhouse, right? Real Housewives of Pensacola, Florida.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I cracked myself up with that one.
I can't. That coat was something like, I like Cruella de Vil. Like, I don't know. That coat had some attitude.
I mean, there were a lot of fashion choices last night that I was like, whoa, what's up with that dress from 1987? I don't know, Mari or Mary or whatever. She had on this like teal, like puff sleeve thing. I'm like, seriously, that's prom 1986. Where are your Payless dyed shoes at, lady?
I had a theory that she lost a dress and she borrowed one of Victoria's. Okay. Because Victoria's had a bunch of dresses like that.
Yeah. Well, so in a move that made me absolutely giddy, Chris Harrison interrupts Victoria and Matt's time.
Yep.
And it's lovely.
And you can tell though, like, I can't figure out why she's even still on the show, because you can tell he actually doesn't like her. Because in that moment, right, like she went in for like the hug. And by the way, I hope that this dude just like carries like mouthwash and Tic Tacs, and there is more saliva swapping than like, a college freshman dorm. I don't know. It's so disgusting to me. But anyway, when she went in, he had no interest in hugging her. I mean, it was very like super stiff.
Yeah. So I saw an article today, and it was the producer of The Bachelor, and basically, why is Victoria on the show? And he said that when they did like the casting call, her personality was out there. He said, we do get people who we think will, he used the term, be big personalities, but I think what he meant was world-class shit stirrer. And he was like, that's who she was. And then she got she got arrested back in 2012 for stealing cosmetics, which she probably did not bring with her to the show, because she seems to have, that was my snarkiness, it's gone, and food from like a gas station. And so then Danielle, because she's one of my besties, sent me a video interview with her, and Victoria, like, she looked good in that, and she seemed coherent. And so I'm just wondering, what is happening to poor Victoria during this time? Like, does she have COVID? Did she get bit by a tick? They're in Pennsylvania. Like, I just feel like there's something not going on right with her, because she doesn't look well. She's not coherent at this point.
It's not, it's multiple girls. It's like
MJ looks rough too.
It's like their life is being zapped out of them. I made the suggestion that perhaps Katie's vibrator is actually sucking the vitality out of other women. I don't know. It's like striking though when you see a video of Victoria now. She looks a lot better. I want to know what her diet is right now. I would like that sort of a transformation.
So I just finished a book called High Achiever, and it's about a lady who gets arrested for drug use, and it's kind of her time in prison and everything. And she talks about like how draining and monotonous it is. And I wonder if some way this is a little bit like prison-esque for the people in there, where it's like, they don't have TVs, they don't have their cell phones, and I'm sure they're all big cell phone users. I wonder if there's like a detox, like, especially you could see Victoria being somebody who's like constantly on her phone, and like she's having to have conversations. And
yeah, because nobody actually wants to be her friend unless it's behind a screen.
Unless you need someone to fight for you.
Oh yeah.
Like Anna takes her under her wing later, right?
I think we were texting about that, but you could tell Anna wanted to start some shit, because when she wanted to talk trash about that girl, she didn't go to, anybody. She went straight to Victoria and was like, well, I heard, because she knew Victoria was going to like, just, yeah.
Is Anna the weird talker?
Teeth girl.
Yeah. Yes.
I actually sent Danielle a message. I'm like, she looks like she's, that game that you put that dental piece in and then you like try to guess what he is saying. I'm like, that's what she looks like when she talks.
I saw a meme where it was like, she looks like she's trying not to lose the Crest white strip off of her teeth. And I was like, as someone who uses Crest white strips, like I know exactly when you like walk around and someone asks you something, you're like, yes.
Girl's drying her teeth. And yeah, it's unfortunate because she's beautiful, but the teeth talking is
there's a big difference between, because she has an amazing smile and then like she gets angry and talks, and it's like, oh, she like, it's just
yeah. So what sort of sets her off though is that Chris Harrison breaks things up between Victoria and Matt, and then announces that there's going to be new girls introduced, and they introduce 5 more women. Y'all, I am grumpy about this. Okay.
First off, Danielle, like you're having a rough week, and I feel like this has kind of become your, like, this is the thing you're pissed about, which I get.
I understand that apparently the argument is that they had more people apply to be on Matt James' season than ever. But just because people want to be in doesn't mean that you have to let them. So they started out the season with more girls than they ever have, and then they just keep adding them. And I think one, the girls are frustrated that, they're like, I just want time. I've been here for 3 weeks. I haven't had time to really meet this person that I'm supposed to be forming a relationship with. But on top of it, as a viewer, I don't feel like I'm getting to know any of the women except for the bullies. And
Right.
I'm not getting to know, like, really get to see people's relationships form. And I am here for the love, right? Bill is here for the drama. I am here for love, folks. And it's just not happening.
As far as the podcast goes, it's not helping us because we were talking. I feel like we've had the same conversation about the show now for 3 weeks in a row. It's like new girl fight. Like we need some relationships so we can talk about them, or it's just going to be me talking about how much I love Victoria and her meanness all the time. And, we're up to like 110 downloads a week. We're going to lose all those listeners except for my mom. Hi, Mom, who listens every week and tells me it was a great episode. And I love that about her.
Yeah, so we have 5 new women. Brittany from Chicago, who sucks his face as soon as she sees him.
But if someone's going to suck your face, she's good looking. So
There is that.
I don't hate either one of them for it. Like, go for it. So I have a question. Sorry, Danielle, I'm running us off the rails today. My furnace
really
is as Danielle's angry.
Gone rogue.
As Danielle is angry about too many girls, my furnace was leaking, and so I've just decided to I just want to see the world burn. I want to see our podcast world burn this week. What is worse, going up and just straight out sucking face with them, or the really ridiculous, like cheesy line when you meet him?
What do you think, Nikki?
Oh, that's a good question.
You'd be cheesy all the way, wouldn't you?
Oh, totally. Although, I do have to say something. So kisses are real for me, right? Like kisses are very real. And it takes generally I'm not kissing random people anymore because I am married. But like my freshman year of college, I think I kissed probably every boy on campus, right? In an effort to find someone who kissed the way I want, because there is something about that kiss. And so maybe that was part of her strategy. Other than just like locking lips and getting sloppy. Yeah, I don't know. Because also, like when Anna kisses him, it's so gross. It's super open mouth, and I feel like there's probably drool coming. And they like change the camera before he has to wipe it off on his sleeve. It's just disgusting, right? So I don't know. I go back and forth on that. If you're in this kind of show, I guess, why not?
I think the awkward is way worse. The awkward, like greeting with like the strange little saying, or I think that's way worse. Like just go get the kiss on.
Mm-hmm. But I will have to say, right. So we all know this is my first episode. I am rooting for Michelle all the way.
Oh.
Like they're it. Like, why don't we just end the show? Because those two are, you could see it from the moment she walked up.
Absolutely. I'm a huge Michelle fan too. We'll get there. Plus she's a teacher and all of us are teachers. So go teachers.
She's the teacher from Minnesota for anyone who doesn't know for sure.
Yeah. So then there's also Ryan, Kimberly.
Love the name. I really like Ryan as a name for a girl. That's all I know about her. I couldn't pick her out of a lineup, but I was like, oh, I like that. I think that's cute.
I like typically male names for women. Like I think it's fun. But
what about women names for men?
What?
What about women's name for men? No, like Kim for a guy.
My son is Harper.
I feel like that's androgynous.
Yeah, that's androgynous. I know a Kim as a guy. It's kind of weird.
Leslie as a guy. Sorry, keep going. All right, I'm gonna focus now. This is it. Vinegar's in the game.
So these new girls, they come on, and the as they call themselves, the varsity,
OG.
the varsity team player, old girls, they are not happy. Is their anger justified? What do y'all think? Do they have a right to be angry?
No. And let me tell you why. Because they have the advantage, right? If you would have asked any of those girls that are already there, here's your option. You get to start midway through the season, or you get to start at the beginning of the season. What would you like? They all would have said beginning of the season. Like, so they're just, yeah. Quit complaining. You're on the show. This should have been in the orientation materials.
I totally agree. Like, here's what I kept thinking, like with all of the, like the complaining and the whining and the bitching, that they all do, right? Like, I was very much having sort of these Bernie Sanders mittens moments, right? Like, hey, I got to swing by the inauguration, but I want to be warm, right? And then I got to go drop off some mail, right? So, that went crazy because people think it's awesome, but I'm like, well, that's no nonsense. The dude's right from Vermont. Of course he's going to dress warm for this thing. So I kept having those moments of like, what did you think this was going to be? Like, how did you think this was going to go? Right. They're like, oh, I'm like, you signed up for this. You've watched it. This is not a surprise to you. I wanted to don't. My mom used to say, you got to pick up your big girl panties, right, and move on.
Absolutely. Pick up those frozen big girl panties.
Pull your frozen training pants off the ground
and get to work. Yeah.
Go talk to Matt.
So I thought they could be mad, but they should be mad at the producers, not at the women.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
You can be mad at the producers for creating this situation, for not giving you time with Matt, but you can't direct that anger towards these girls that are here for the same reason that you are.
Exactly.
So I'm going to do my extra credit.
Okay.
I know I kind of already did one, but I'll do one.
Oh, hey, you're in charge.
So,
bam.
I want to talk a little bit about territoriality. Okay. So typically when I teach about the territoriality, I'm teaching it in nonverbal communication under a unit on proximity. So proximity is the study of space, and territoriality is a possessive reaction to an area or a particular object. In this case, maybe Matt. And we oftentimes, lay claim to or defend our turf, right? So territoriality signals ownership. We mark our territories much like animals do. There's ways that yes, Nikki peeing on
and
things.
Nikki pees outside like this is my house.
People do this metaphorically, but some people just go right in there for it. Also, like Bill was saying, we oftentimes have home field advantage, right? So when something happens on our territory, we have an advantage to that. So there's recommendations, for example, that if you're going to ask for a raise to do it, well, your boss is in your office. So when you were saying like they shouldn't be mad, they have home field advantage. You're right. So it can also, territoriality can also signal status. So the location, size, and appearance of territory matters. We also can invade territories of people with lower status. So, but we oftentimes wait for permission to enter territories of higher status people. So for example, when Catalina comes in, Miss Universe, and Victoria steals her crown, well, one, that we could break that whole situation down, but she's more able to do that without complete pandemonium because she has some status because she's already been there.
Right. If the roles were reversed, you're saying like if she had been wearing her crown and Miss Universe grabbed it, there would have been a fight.
Oh yeah. For multiple reasons.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. And then we typically have different types of territories. So we have body territories, home territories, different kinds of territories, right? We also have different ways that we mark our territories. So sometimes, I was using the example when I was texting Bill this morning that if you're at the gym and you leave your towel on the treadmill and then you go get a drink of water and you come back and someone's on your treadmill, you're like, what? Like I left my towel on there. Didn't you know that was mine? Jerk, right? And so a lot of times we'll put one object there and that like signals that everything, you know, like that thing around it is yours. So one of the ways that we really see this on the show is that they have some rules about one-on-one time with Matt on group dates. So when Brittany, a newcomer, comes in, and who was it that was on that date? I'm having like a blank.
It was Anna, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Anna. Comes in and is like, hey, can I steal him from you? And Anna's like, no, like I want some more time. And then she just stands there in the back.
I call that the angry patron. Like when you're at a bar and you're waiting for someone to get out your table and you're like,
yeah.
But the other thing too with that is that Anna then didn't even say anything. She's just like, I like, she reminds me of a foot stomper. She's for sure a foot stomper when she doesn't get her way, right?
Absolutely. A foot stomper and a teeth talker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about territoriality. We might think about how that plays out in this episode.
oh, question.
Yeah.
So I saw this, that Donald Trump, our former president, when he would sit down, he would push stuff away from him. Is that part of kind of what you're talking about? Like
yeah, we might think about that as manspreading, right?
Okay.
So manspreading is this idea that typically people in position of power also take up more space. So we might think about that in terms of physical space. The person that has the most power typically has the biggest office, the better view, et cetera, et cetera. People that have more money typically have more square footage of their homes. Well, when we also are people that are in power wanting to assert power, oftentimes take up more physical space. Their bubbles are allowed to be bigger, and you're not allowed to invade their bubble the same way that they might invade your bubble. So we do this with kids a lot, right? If I kind of go up to my kid and I get something off of his face, like I'm invading his space. If he would turn around and do that to me, or if like I was at work and Bill came up and like I would be like, what are you right? So I think that there's like ways in which those sort of boundaries sort of exist around territory. So when somebody takes up a lot of physical space like that, there's all these images, for example, of men on subways, taking up with their, their legs really separated, their arms kind of out, while other people are having to stand because they're taking up 3 different seats worth of space. So that is definitely a power play.
I like it. Well, I don't like it, but I appreciate the information.
You're welcome. So, rose ceremony. Khayla, Callie, and Kim go home. Were you surprised by any of the people that went home?
Khayla, I thought their whole North Carolina connection was going to be a thing. I felt bad for Kim. She clearly did not belong. She looked different from everybody. Her dress looked very odd. Like I thought maybe she was a producer and they just were like, her lifelong dream was to be on The Bachelor. And so it was like her last day and they're like, you know what, Kim, get it. Here's this weird swimsuit dress. Just go out there. And it's like, even when she was talking to him, it's like, she just didn't have much to say. She didn't seem real sad when she left. It was like,
yeah. I was a little surprised by Khayla. I was surprised that I was more surprised by some of the people that he kept. I was surprised that he kept a couple of the new girls. I want to say Kimberly and Catalina, and Ryan actually, like Brittany and Michelle, I felt like maybe there could be something, but the other 3, I was like, So I was kind of surprised by that. Also, some of the other girls start to unravel at this point. So Anna is really worried that she's getting sent home. Serena starts crying, and you're like, this seems excessive. I'm really uncomfortable for you.
Yeah. Anna, the thing with Anna was like, I think she was almost crying too. And it's like, but then when he gave her the rose, she was all happy. And so what I couldn't decide was she crying and then went out to the rose ceremony, or was this after and she was being re-traumatized because she was very smiley? But yeah, things just aren't going well. Like they need to check for like a radon leak there or something in that building.
It's unhinged, like
Mhm.
legitimately unhinged. Because I kept thinking, you know, they're like, oh, the show's about finding love. And I'm like, really? Or is it about winning?
That is, you know, one of the things that I continually struggle with this show is that I understand that it's a competition. There's many ways that they use the language of competition throughout. They have like actual competitions on many of the group dates.
Yeah, poor
It
girl got
is,
stuck in the pumpkin.
yes, yes. Yes, the pumpkins. By the way, so Bill, you have rode a pumpkin before?
Yeah, when I was in Ireland, when I was in college, they had this race that you went down the river and people would stand and like throw eggs and stuff at you, and whoever got down the river first won. And I had a friend who had a pumpkin, and his buddy that was going to help him wasn't there. He's like, "You want to help?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to ride a pumpkin." So yeah,
Bill, you have lived. You have
have.
lived,
Yes.
my friend.
I have packed a lot into my 38 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, so we get, okay, right before that, we get like this surprise visit from Ben Higgins.
What are we even doing anymore?
This is dumb. They keep doing this on the show. They like bring in past bachelors and they're like supposed to be like good friends with the current bachelor. And you can tell that they don't really know each other. And it's like, oh, they're here to help guide them on their journey. And I'm just like so over this.
And
Like,
sometimes, yeah, you can tell, like sometimes, all right, they're friends. And then other times like this, it was the best example I can give is when your spouse is friends with somebody and you are forced to spend a night at a dinner party with the spouse of that friend, right? And you're like trying to find common ground. You're like, so what type of beer you like? Wheat beer. I'm a lager, man. Like it just, yeah, it was just awkward. And yeah,
it was, yeah. So let's move on. So we have this date. Poor, is it Maggie or
Maggie, yeah.
Maggie can't really row. It's adorable. I liked it. But then they're like having this squirrel competition, and Victoria looks somehow better in a squirrel costume than she does regularly. Um, I Bill, you loved this date, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I like a good competition, and this seemed like acceptable levels. So yeah, I thought it was funny. I don't
I
know.
was just like, how did they come up with this?
I actually wrote in my notes. I said, I would like to do the fall in love race. Like I was all about it. I'm like, I could do that. Absolutely. Although I was concerned that they didn't actually carry the nuts like they were supposed to, because they were supposed to carry the nuts like squirrels, but they just had them with their hands. Squirrels don't carry nuts with their hands, do they?
No, they carry them in their mouths.
Yes.
Danielle knows. I've been sending her squirrel facts for a while now. So
Yes. So I think that they all cheated because they did not follow directions.
well, the rules are always loose on these. Yeah, like with that weird paintball capture the flag cake thing 2 episodes ago, and it was like, what? I have no idea.
I
thought it was a good date.
it was fun. I just am always like, how do they come up with this? How are they like, we're gonna put them in squirrel costumes and this will bring Matt closer to them. But so the group kind of progresses. This is where we have Brittany interrupting Anna. Bree ends up getting the group date rose. Anna's super disappointed because she thought she was going to get it. I think that her meanness really comes out because she's now like blaming that she didn't get the rose on Brittany's interruption.
Yeah, this is where she really turns. Like up to that point, you're like, oh, I don't know, this could be bad. And then you really see her start to be kind of a jerk. You know, this is where she first brings up the whole escort thing, which apparently has no, like, she's not really an escort. Like, that was the funny thing is she said she might be an escort, and the girl's like, I'm not. And she's like, okay, fine. It's like, if you think someone, like, if you're willing to go and tell people that like this person is taking money to like show someone around, maybe have sex with them, and then they just say they're not, and you're just like, okay, you really didn't believe it that much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Bad news bear.
Mm-hmm.
So then let's talk about something that's delightful.
Yes.
Michelle. So Michelle. Yeah, so wow. They go on this date and, you know, tell me your thoughts. Why do we love Michelle? What did we see happening between them?
Ease. That's what I saw. There's a sense of ease.
So I felt like this was the first date that he went on where there was an attraction and you weren't like, oh, it's because of this, or they did this, or this seems like infatuation. I mean, this seemed like a type of date that if you were going to be like, this is my ideal first date with someone I might fall in love with, they like, you know, they did some stuff that's fun, but they also talk the whole time. They had lots of mutual interests. You could tell that. He really admired what she did. They seem to have similar beliefs. I mean, kind of everything you want in a first date. You get to know him. You don't get to know too much. Yeah.
I agree. I would also like to know, okay, the binoculars were a little much for me.
Love it.
Right? Like, okay, why
just happen to have binoculars and just
with the binoculars? Yeah. And then yes, like, where did you guys pack binoculars? Really? Where did these binoculars come? And all of a sudden they're like up on the top, you know, like clean the. And I'm like, really? Like, why? You know you're gonna be upset watching that. Why would you do such a thing? And
I imagined like 4 producers like pulling the balloon and then like
right.
Producers laying out White Claws like out to the porch with the binoculars set up, and the girls are like, and I did really like Serena P. I liked when she was like, imagine having your first kiss on a hot air balloon. They're like, stop. And she's like, I'm sorry. But just imagine. Like, I feel like at least she had a sense of humor about it, you know?
Yeah, I really like Serena P.
I think it's going to end up between Serena P., Michelle, and Rachel.
I
feel like you can see it coming. It's coming.
What about Bree though?
Nah.
No.
I don't know why. I don't have that strong of an opinion. I just felt like saying nah. I got to look and see who Bree is. To make
Bree,
sure.
he had his very first one-on-one with Bree.
I also have to say, I was thinking this during the Michelle date, though, right? Because I'm obviously very much a pragmatist as I'm watching this, right? I'm like, okay, what do these people actually do for jobs that they can take this amount of time off, right? So that's on my mind, okay? And then I was thinking on top of that, when I was watching the date with Michelle, I'm like, and you can't find long-term subs. Like, who's watching her class? Long-term subs.
No, it's all online, and she's like jumping on like, hold on, Matt. Johnny's not doing his calculus.
Hey, I gotta teach them 5 + 4. Like, how is this working? Because legitimately, if you ask anybody in K-12, you cannot find subs. So who's watching the kids?
She's got a real job. She's not like a former.
Yes, Queen is my job.
I really appreciated the conversation about what teaching is like during COVID, and conversations about race relations, and the conversation about race relations and teaching in Minneapolis in the wake of the events of the summer. So I thought that I really appreciated, one, that they're not cutting these conversations, that they're putting these they're putting these conversations on air. I appreciate it too, because it does feel like real, genuine talk. So I appreciated all of those things.
Tom said that when he was on last season, Tom Hall.
Mm-hmm.
he said that it felt very authentic, and I would agree. It's not like they're not like the binoculars and the balloon where you can tell that the producers are like, yes, 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 yes. Or Anna sitting down with him and Brittany coming out. Like that felt like that was, they had that. It was, and maybe that's why their connection felt so authentic, because you could tell that they were both into it.
Absolutely. So then we go back to the house, and things with the Anna Brittany escort rumors really start to escalate. Can you update us on the poll that we did?
So the majority of people could not date an escort. The majority said no. There was a of the like 50 or whatever who took it, most said no. Few people said only if I knew what it was, only if it wasn't for sex. There was only a few people who said yes. I'd be interested to ask them, would you ever hire an escort? What we find a lot of times is that people are willing to partake in those services, but they would never have a long-term partner that was part of it, which I always think is an interesting dichotomy. For another day.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on track now, Danielle. D3.
That's great.
Yeah.
So then we move to the group date again, and they start out in like the forest, and I agree with Bill that I think that this was just set up to start here so that we could see Matt James with his shirt off, like squatting a tree.
Right.
Yeah. So but Bill, I think you have some extra credit here.
Right. Well, first off, I tried this and the neighbors were like yelling at me to like put my shirt back on. Like I was lifting our wheelbarrow and they were just like, come on, guy, put it back on. We're going to call the cops. So I'm going to talk a little bit about intra-sex competition. So you think a lot about intersex competition, which is where we fight to have our potential mate pick us. But there's also this whole line of research about intrasex, which is how we kind of try to pick off our potential combatants or people who might vie for that. And so what we find is that there is a pretty big difference within the sexes. Now, again, we are talking about heterosexual relationships. I could not find anything about same-sex relationships and how this goes down. But Kordsmeyer and Saxton, 2018 and 2015, found that men are much more likely to use physical means of intersex competition. So that means that they will, like the boxing date, that is much more normal around men. We also find that men are much more attuned to characteristics that show dominance. So that is like a really deep voice. It is like being very muscular. Let's see. I had some other one. Oh, facial hair. All things that other men see and view it as dominance, and it may stop them from going for a potential mate. Now, if you ask women how attractive they are, there's this curvilinear relationship where they're like, he's attractive. And then you think of like a bodybuilder, and then the large portion of the population starts to think somebody that is that big and that muscular is not attractive, right? But it still has a big impact on if you have a group of men, if they will go for a potential mate. Women, on the other hand, still do compete. They still have intersex competition. However, they use more social means. So probably what you would expect, right? When we've talked about this, I say this like this is class. Last week in class when we talked about this, women tend to be more social. So this is Villancourt 2013 and Bogle 2018, Bogle. But women typically are going to criticize looks. They are going to spread rumors, specifically about sexual promiscuity between women. And then they're going to use social exclusion. So they are going to exclude women, which you're seeing this play out right now, right? Last time the men were in each other's faces, they were going to get in a fight. Remember, Chasen got up in, I can't think of the guy's name, the guy that looked like Wreck-It Ralph. Ed. He got up in Ed's face and was going to like punch him, right? That's much more acceptable for men in society, but for women, that's not as acceptable. So they tend to use those social means. So they pair off, they spread rumors. So that's the state of that research.
Thank you, Bill. We're edified.
Oh, so this was my last thing. This is probably why you saw Matt not even go through all of the different boxing matches, right? Because once it started to get violence, it's a lot less acceptable for women to fight it out. And that's, he was like, we're done. It's over. So.
Okay, were you two? I was actually kind of hoping Victoria was going to box. Like, I was a little bit sad. Like, let's get her in the ring. Come on.
I think Victoria is throwing a punch, and I think she looks like she's not a small, like I think she could probably punch someone. And I feel like MJ's probably stabbed someone for drugs before. Just like she's just got that look.
I was just like wondering too if there'd been so much tension in the house, if that after them getting to literally punch each other, if things felt like if some of that tension
like a catharsis.
Yeah,
I actually have I can tell you a little bit about research on that. We cognitively, we think this, but what we know from research is that that's not true. Violence begets more violence. So, it's like people tend to use that as their fallback. So
that's useful knowledge.
Yeah.
So things kind of continue, and eventually Katie is feeling really uncomfortable with the way that the girls are talking about the new girls in particular, and she goes outside to let Matt know that she thinks that there's some problematic rumors being spread. What do y'all think about Katie's choice to disclose this to Matt? Good choice, bad choice?
I love her. Like, I legitimately, because here's the other thing. So she did this thing, right? But she didn't do it for her benefit, right? Because at the end of this conversation, she wasn't like trying to get in his pants or get kisses or anything else. I mean, she legitimately was like, this is, causing our house to be uncomfortable and full of strife, and we've got to do something about it. So, like, I don't think that Katie and him are a match, but I hope she stays on to the end just to keep everybody else right under control.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely wasn't the easy thing to do. So kudos to her. When you've got a group of 7 people that are doing something like that, to be the voice of dissent is hard. There's tons of psychological research about the bystander effect, and good for her. I don't think it helped her. I think she has been friend zoned, and she is not coming out of that friend zone. But that's good, because she is tailor-made for Bachelor in Paradise. She is the perfect Bachelor. Like, she's funny, she's cute, she's sexually like open. Like, she's the perfect Bachelor in Paradise person. She will make out with everyone will want it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I really like Katie too. And much like what you were talking about, Nikki, I feel like typically when you see a contestant, go to the lead and say, hey, there's a problem, it's them tattling on someone that has been causing problems for them. And I think that this is unique in that she's kind of sticking up for someone else in doing this, and you don't see that quite as often on the show.
And typically it's like a 1-to-1 type thing, and they're like, they don't actively go and seek him out. It's like they're having 1-to-1 time, and they say, I'm not feeling good, and they wait for them to ask, where she like sought him out.
Absolutely. So we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but who are your front runners at this point? You got Michelle.
Yeah. Go for it. Anyone else? I named mine.
Michelle's mine, right? I mean, I've only seen one episode, but there was something very genuine. Like, I was surprised to see that, right? I was like, oh, that thing actually looks and feels real. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Michelle, Bree, Rachel. Who am I forgetting? There's like one other that.
Victoria?
No, Victoria.
Michelle, Bree, Rachel, Serena.
Oh, I like Serena P a lot too. Yeah. So what's your episode in a sentence, or what's your key takeaways?
Keep your hands up, move your head when you're in a fight. That is my key takeaway. I did kickboxing for about 1.5 2 years, and like, hands up, move your head. And you probably shouldn't spar on your first day of kickbox training.
Oh my goodness. I think I'm going to go with what I learned from you today, Bill, that violence begets violence. It's good.
Good too. I'm gonna go with Katie and never be a bystander.
Yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
Great life lessons from The Bachelor. So, Nikki, are there any shout outs that you'd like to give
The final
while
word.
you're on? Any final words?
Final words. I will have to say at the very end, right? I was like, ooh, okay, what's going to happen now? Right. Because it ended, right, with the we're going to have a conversation about the behaviors in our house. And so it totally reels you in. And I can see that.
You always quit until your next time.
Yeah. And I guess I continue to go back to wondering why, like, why would you want to be on this show? Right. Like, I struggle with that, other than, obviously fame and all of those things. Like, do they get a clothing budget? Maybe that's it. Right. But I don't know.
Would you not have done it in your 20s?
That's a really good question. Right.
You've done it in your 20s?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
Probably, here's the thing, probably not, because I'm actually really shy around like relational things, like you all talking, like Nikki talking about making out with people, that makes me so uncomfortable. Well, like I would have been terrible on the show, but I like the idea of my younger self being courageous and going on the show.
I don't think that I would have, and here's why. I abhor conflict. Like, so badly. And I fully admit that that's not one of my greatest traits, right? That I totally run the other direction. And I think I would have inherently known that there was going to be lots of conflict. Because in my brain, right, I'm like, oh, it's like Sister Wives. We're all going to hang out. Because there's a piece of that I like, right? Like, hey, let's hang out by the pool. You have to deal with the dude one night, and then I'm hanging by the pool for the rest of the week, right? Like, I don't know, right? I'm only responsible for laundry once and supper once, and there's something to that. But yeah, the competition thing, that would have been rough. So I don't know that I can say no or yes, Bill.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another episode. We did it.
Yeah. Shout out. Anyone you want to yell out to?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It was fun. And I actually enjoyed watching it, even though I had a lot of what moments, right? What am I watching? What is this? And I'm going to take a shout out to my daughter, who's 16, Estelle, because she came upstairs and she was like, Mom, what are you watching? Because I have like forbade her to watch this stupid show. Like, I don't care if she watches horror movies, but I don't want her to watch The Bachelor. And I told her, and she like watches it for 3 minutes and she goes, this is the dumbest thing ever. And then like toodles on to get herself a bowl of cereal for supper, right? And so total shout out to her for recognizing that this is not the way to move forward for long-lasting, loving relationships.
Well, maybe she can listen to Bachelormania and we can help her intellectualize this terrible show that we adore.
And I get why you do, right? It's kind of train wreckish, right? Like, can't look away, can't look away. Just get yourself some binoculars. Evidently that helps.
That's great. I think we should end it there. Get yourself some binoculars, folks.
See y'all next week.
Thank you.
Bye. You've been listening to Bachelormania with your hosts, Doctors Danielle Dick McGew and Bill Henniger. All opinions expressed on this show are solely the opinion of the person who spoke them. If you like our podcast, please consider following us, leaving us a 5-star rating, and a positive review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, please share with your friends, family, and other ardent Bachelor content lovers. If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at batchadamia@gmail.com or on the Twitter with the handle @batchadamia. Thanks for listening.